Women's health is finally having its moment. From cycle tracking apps to hormone therapy to wearables promising to optimize every workout, but there's a problem. Most of the science, the algorithms, and even the fitness advice were originally built around the male physiology. Today, we're joined by exercise physiologist Dr. Abbie Smith-Ryan, one of the world's leading researchers in female metabolism and performance, to explore what happens when we finally study women's bodies on their own terms and how simple lifestyle strategies may outperform the expensive hacks everyone's chasing. Welcome to the show, Dr. Abbie Smith-Ryan.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, hope you still feel that way after our tons of questions.
I did notice that you both have doctor in front of your name, and then I put my credentials at the end of my name. And we could always start with a little healthy debate. I always say I'm the wrong kind of doctor, but I know it's going to be fun. I'm not going to have all the answers, but
Well, no, actually, what's funny is that I've noticed that because we're chiropractors,
yeah,
but our specialty is in sports.
yeah.
We always have to throw that doctor on the front end to carry some weight there. So I don't know. Well, we'll let the audience be the judge of how smart we are. So here we go. All right, Abby, let me ask you just to start. For decades, women have been told that follow the same training, diet, and recovery advice that we didn't realize until recently that is, for men, by men, and so on. But it's just scaled down. But what does that really mean? Is there one myth about female physiology that you wish that you wish would disappear tomorrow, and what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love science and the foundation of science, and it was largely built on male physiology, and I think we can draw a lot from that. But I also would love us to have a better reckoning that there are key differences between males and females in our physiology. Not everything is different. But there are key things that do impact performance, recovery, how we feel mentally, physically, emotionally. And that awareness can be really powerful. That doesn't mean we have to change every approach that we've always done. But yeah, I think having those direct conversations about what is different and how might that change how we approach things is really important.
Are there any like things that really get you going from the start, or maybe questions that you've been asked often?
Gosh, so many. But one of the things that I think is the most clear in the literature, I'll just give you this example. We know that the way a man's vessels dilate is very different than a way a woman's vessels dilate. And so, what I mean by that is blood flow and vascularity and delivery of nutrients and removal of nutrients. And so, as someone, as a physiologist, when we think about vessel dilation and getting blood to certain tissues. And then I also study sports supplements. Think about all the supplements that are claimed to increase vasodilation and vascularity. They will work different for males and females, and even recovery, etc. And so that's just a true example of we might need to think about all this foundational work that we've done on the vascular system and how then things like exercise and nutrition impact that not only across the menstrual cycle, but then also as women go into peri and postmenopause and those hormones change. And so that's just one example of key foundational physiology. Then that leads to more questions that we really need to understand now that we understand the hormonal influence.
Hmm. Go ahead, Terry. I was just going to crack a joke, but not a joke.
I think you
No,
should.
no, okay,
Okay, well, now
because
you opened the door, right?
yeah, because I got to tell you, it wasn't too long. Last year, I was walking into the gym, and one of my training partners found a box of, or an empty box of Viagra in front of the gym, and I go, what the? He goes, look what I found. I go, he actually took a picture of it. He didn't pick it up, and and I find out that that's something that bodybuilders do because that it opens up the blood vessels. Now,
Mhm.
that's not something women would do, I would imagine.
I mean, not Viagra, but I we could talk a long time about conversations about the women, like women needing something like that that's not
So,
available. But if we look at it slightly different, if you look at anything that increases blood flow, it's still going to increase blood flow for a woman. It might just work slightly different. It might need a higher dose, or a lot of times women's vessels are smaller. So things like I think about even bodybuilding, like what you might do to increase vasodilation. Well, exercise works better than anything, but then you might think about like some alcohol would increase vasodilation, caffeine, maybe some vasodilation to some areas of the body. It's the degree and the impact can be different between men and women.
Is that is that something that is important not just for training, but for, like, anti-aging and longevity to, increase dilation of the because isn't it transient to if you take a supplement, it only happens for a short time, or is that something that someone, or a woman would do on a continual basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing we know very well is that one of the key things that happens to women in perimenopause is pretty significant changes to cardiovascular health and the cardiovascular system, really relying on vasodilation and vascular changes because of the hormonal aspect. So, yes, you can't just exercise once and I mean you'll get some acute effects of vasodilation, or just take one beetroot supplement, you'll get those acute effects of vasodilation. But it's really that chronic lifestyle that helps with vasodilation and capillarization and oxygen delivery, CO2, removal. That is a key foundation of why we exercise for. Maybe we could discuss this term longevity, but why we exercise for health and applications of that.
On that note, I have patients come in, women wearing wearables now, right? They have the Apple Watch, the rings, and everything like that, and they're listening to their their wearable, or they're paying attention to that more than how they feel.
Mhm.
And I have women going, "Oh, I have a sleep score of 92, and my HRV is fantastic." And I'm like, "How do you feel?" She goes, "Like shit." So and yeah, I feel sleep deprived, but my sleep score is great. So it must be something else. And what's your answer when people, especially women, start talking about wearables?
I mean, I think wearables are a powerful tool, especially. I mean, I think that is one. Men use wearables too, but I do feel like there's data that women really want that data. They want to understand. There is some empowering kind of element to it, and we use wearables all the time. But what's really interesting, and I'm a quantitative researcher, and wearables are quantitative, but what I continue to see is like performance outcome numbers, wearable numbers, often aren't detecting any changes, let's say with across the menstrual cycle or with hormones, but those qualitative, like how do you feel change. And as someone that is very data driven, I've had to adapt a bit and say, like, it does matter. We have to capture that qualitative, how do you feel? Because that indirectly impacts a lot of things. It might not directly. And I always say that of like, no matter what we know about the physiology, a woman, she can perform at any given point in the cycle and she will perform. However, based on some of those feelings, like if she's feeling like shit, she's going to show up, but then she might need to recover different, or we might need to modify her, her sleep habits that day or her nutritional intake that day. And so wearables are good, but I actually find the opposite. It'll say like it'll tell me like I suck, I need to sleep more. When in reality of like you have like I don't need the negative feedback. I think the positive feedback can be helpful, but I love to use wearables as a way to inform men and women about okay, well actually what do we need to do we need to look at training or use it as a tool in the toolbox.
So, as wearables, do you recommend? Is there any style you recommend for the watch versus the rings or stuff like that? Is there anything in your research that you find is better, and which one do you feel does one thing better, and which one feels like you do another thing better?
That's a good question. I think a couple of the wearables are working really hard to be integrated where it's not just one thing, and consistency is going to help with a lot of things like what does it show for you. I'm going to talk about something it's not a wearable, but what I think is cool. Like we've used Aura and Whoop and Garmin and Apple and all the things, and it really just depends what you want, and most importantly what will participants use and wear all the time. And you might use one for sleep and one for temperature or something like that. But we've actually started using at-home urine trackers that were meant for fertility, but use it as a way that we can capture hormones every day of a cycle or two. And let me tell you, it's really empowering to say, like, well, no wonder I feel like shit today. My estrogen is low and my progesterone is high. Or no wonder my sleep, I had a hot flash. Like, especially in that perimenopause kind of really variable. The other thing that we're seeing that maybe you guys see is there's this group of women that are very active, and they're, Title IX, they're training all the time, and they're late 30s, early 40s, and is a mix of hormones, and it's a mix of, I wouldn't say overtraining, but like training and maybe not getting the most appropriate fuel. And so hormones are low, and they're getting symptoms of perimenopause, but it actually may be more low energy availability. And these urine hormone trackers can be really helpful of like, oh, okay, there's a reason I'm really tired, or like, oh, I felt really good. So that's not a wearable, but I think tech is really interesting and enhances our ability to translate to people's lives that doesn't happen in a lab or, like having a ton of resources.
Wait, I gotta ask. This urine track. This is see. I love this stuff because nobody knows about this. Nobody should, and people should. So the urine trackers. Is this the same thing that my ex-wife used when we were trying to get pregnant? I mean, we have 2 boys now, but at the time she'd go, "Okay, it's time. We can have sex now." Is this the
Kind
same thing?
Well, so like it used to, like there's still ovulation. That usually is like an ovulation stick, and when you ovulate, you're the most fertile. And now they have them like it started in the fertility world, so like you could track for more than just those few days. And now though they're tracking more than just estrogen, progesterone. A lot of times we're getting LH, FSH. At home, I don't have one up here, but in the lab, it's you just like read a QR code after you pee on it. It's very cool. Yeah.
So, where can we? I mean, where could they get this?
Yeah. You
Sorry.
can
He's
get
gonna
it
be
too.
peeing a stick
No,
every
no, no.
morning.
I actually think you should pee on a stick.
He
It'll
does.
come back saying reject. What are you talking
No,
about?
he won't. He watches Barbie, so he'll measure his estrogen, and
That is true.
You do have estrogen, so
So it would work if I did it.
totally work. And we'll probably
yeah.
find out why you're more sensitive than me, and it'll probably we'll balance it out.
Abbie talk, man. I don't want to hear that.
Maybe we just found the thing that is more supportive for women than men. You guys don't have an at-home urine tracker for testosterone, and maybe we need that.
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
That'd be awesome. I would love to know. And it's funny because I often tell patients that do, especially the females that get, they get their testosterone, estradiol, and all that, and progesterone tested. I go, that's just a snapshot. That's not a movie. We don't really know.
Yeah,
And
which
so
is
what
what
you're
we're
saying
trying
is,
to do. Yeah, so you can get them over the counter, and like we've used, there's a couple different brands. Anito we've used in the lab, Mira we've used in the lab, Uva. There's all sorts of them on the market, and they all have a similar technology. Some of them have different hormones per stick, but it obviously is a cost. But I agree. Like my hope is that in the future, when someone goes on hormone replacement therapy or is having some hormonal changes, instead of just saying, oh, take it one time, we can allow more of this tracking to understand what's really happening.
I'm gonna ask a question. Have you seen any integration between this stick that we're talking about, and can you upload that data to your wearable ring so it can actually start correlating the two?
They're trying, yes. So I think absolutely. I don't see why we're not at this point. But over like we've been using them for the last 2 years, and I know there are a few groups that are definitely trying to do that. Yeah.
interesting. I really, this is actually fascinating because I'm immediately going to tell several of my female patients that would be a great tool to use to identify what you're really feeling versus, maybe your aura ring or what have you. So, you actually pretty much answered one of my questions regarding energy, or the women feel like they're under fueling, and then they get all these different, oh, you need to add more calories, and they're afraid because they're going to get overweight or what have you. And you hear so many things, especially from the influencers that think they know what they're talking about. But so what this could be a way to identify the reason why you're not having energy is based on more on something objective like your hormone levels, because that could make a huge impact. Now,
100%. And I think it's indirect and direct, but absolutely. Like if you have very low hormone, estrogen, progesterone, and obviously testosterone, we don't have on a stick yet. But that absolutely can impact energy.
so,
Can I
oh,
interject something really quick that
yeah.
kind of ties into this? For a lot of the listeners, the doctors understand, but a lot of the lay listeners will say women, they feel like everything breaks at in their 40s and 50s. Can you kind of tie this in and educate the listener what's really happening in this transition? And is it a hormone thing? Is it a train thing? Is it a diet? I mean, it's kind of tying this in, but I want the average listener who doesn't really understand this to go, what is really happening? So they understand when they pee on a stick what a hormone is telling them.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a key area of my research is to try and figure out what is happening. And so the first thing I'll say is every woman has different symptoms, and it's hard to know what is happening. And really, essentially, what's happening is you're producing lower amounts of estrogen and progesterone. And FSH is often an indicator identifying when someone is in perimenopause. But before perimenopause, not most, but cycle, it's cyclical, where our hormones are low and they peak for ovulation, and then luteal phase becomes much higher, preparing for fertility, and essentially rolling into midlife. We no longer have eggs to ovulate, so ovulation goes down. Our hormones are low. Well, what happens in perimenopause is it's often up and down, up and down, up and down. It's no longer like a nice cycle. And then into postmenopause, often women feel better because the hormones are more stable. They're less variable. And so why I am, kind of not avoiding your question, it's if a woman is in perimenopause, first of all, it's often a slow transition and they don't understand what's happening. And so someone may get hot at night. Someone may have brain fog. Someone may be tired. I posted this thing and, I was like, oh, I'm playing a fun game as a midlife woman. Am I dying or is it perimenopause? And and like, all the women wrote back is like, oh, I play a game. Like, am I pregnant or am I perimenopause? Am I crazy or am I perimenopause? And so there's lots of different side effects per se. And it is driven by hormones, but I think the other piece is the indirect. And so one key takeaway that is consistent in the literature is like there are body composition changes, there are brain changes that tend to stabilize into postmenopause. But you know what is really helpful? Consistent exercise, fueling yourself, sleep, and that's often hard. So then that's where the indirect piece, like if I'm really tired and I don't have any energy, well then am I going to train? And so we need to lower the barrier. It goes back to how we started this session of like, I tell women in this life, just do something. Just do something that you can do every day and take care of yourself. And then if we go back to like vasodilation, we are finding that women that exercise consistently, they're not the ones that are having a lot of hot flashes. Their bodies are used to kind of that cooling and that vasodilation. So that's really what we're trying to also understand is how do you feel better during this life space and like really be empowered to take some action.
So, let me ask you, because a lot of my patients actually, a lot of our patients that are into uh, a healthcare that's void of medication and surgeries and all that, they're turning to nutrition and peptides. Peptides is a big one nowadays. Would that be a good tool, the urine hormone stick, to identify how some of the peptides that do enhance hormone? Would you think that, in your best guess, would that be something that could be a good way to monitor changes, because some people aren't sure if peptides are working or not, or the ones that enhance some of the hormone, like growth hormone or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't for the peptides that I'm aware of. I think some better tracking tools would be some like simple strength outcomes. Like what are some peak strength changes? You're not going to get that in urine hormones. But I think anytime you can do some measurements of tracking, it's really helpful. So whether that be, if the goal is to get stronger, well, then do some strength outcomes. Is if the goal is to lose body fat and increase muscle, we'll do those measures to see. And I think on the opposite end is true, and that's where I spend a lot of my time is understanding those body composition changes and actually measuring it. So, like a classic example I have with midlife women is, let's say we just finished a big study looking at twice a week heavy resistance training with creatine or without. And a lot of these women, yeah, I know it's a hot topic. A lot of these
Yeah,
midlife women didn't change a whole lot of weight or gained weight in the 6 weeks. But when we looked at their body composition, there was some really fascinating body recomposition happening, a decrease in fat and an increase in muscle size and quality, which we never would have known if we only looked at body weight. And so it's just very telling during a time when, weight changes across the cycle and into perimenopause.
Abbie, could you just, would you mind just mentioning, because I get asked the question all the time about creatine, a dosage for women?
Yeah.
Is there a formula?
So funny. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's okay. Two things.
By the way, did you see how he went all excited? He
I
did.
know.
I
And
I actually break
sorta,
out in a sweat. I don't know.
I don't know if people realize this, but have you seen the creatine sales? It's like projected to be like it's like triple of what it has been.
What's up with
And
that?
the
Yeah.
cool thing, I don't think people are realizing, it's because it's not just men buying it anymore. It's women and, just active individuals. And so to me, that's a really empowering. Like if you give those people education, they will help with the market. But from a science side of things, like I've been studying creatine since I was in grad school. And yeah, for dosing, what I always tell women is like if you want if you want to know if it's working for you, a loading dose is something that will get you there faster. And a loading dose is 5 grams 4 times a day for about five days. Now, I'm not saying that you do that, but like if someone's like, "Oh, I'm really fatigued. I want to see if it impacts my exercise. I want to see if it impacts anything." A loading dose just gets your muscle saturated more quickly. So in about 5 days. You also then can see if there's any, I mean, there's not really any side effects. We can come back to that. The other approach is to do 5 grams a day, every day for 3 to 4 weeks. And I would start with that to see everyone responds differently, but 5 grams over 3 to 4 weeks would result in a similar muscle saturation to the 20 grams a day. But new research also shows that 10 grams a day can help with more of the brain and cognition, and maybe slightly better effects. But if someone's just starting, I would start with 5 grams. If someone's been taking it a while and wants to see, the theory is that once my muscle is saturated, then it will go to my brain. And we're about to look at some of those dosing differences in women.
So I got a
Okay,
quick
wait.
question.
No.
You got the wait. You got the people to say if 10 is good, 100 is better.
Yeah. Well, so a couple things to think about. You don't want to take it all at one time. But for me, for example, like let's say I have to give a talk and I'm traveling across country or like overseas or like whatever, I'll take, 10 to 15 to 20 grams in those days, even though like I take it every day, it gives you that boost. And so there's cool data up to 30 grams in concussion, post concussion. So there does seem to be a higher level needed for brain targets. And there are very minimal side effects. I think the one thing that people don't talk about is you do need to consume more water because it works by pulling water into the muscle. And so if you're dehydrated, you won't see effects. And then if you're drinking more water and it's pulling more water into the cell and you're having, high doses, you're going to hold on to some water weight short term. We don't see it as much in women, but again, those are those higher doses, and we can talk about weight gain, etc. Um,
Okay,
but that's,
ready?
20
Ready?
grams ready. Yeah.
Powder or capsules?
Well, I thought you were, okay, so totally biased here. I help a company with gummies. Um,
I
And
was
gosh, did you see? So I like the powder, plain creatine monohydrate powder for my daily dose. But then I like the gummies as a travel, or like I'll grab a couple as like my second dose. So I'll do 5 grams in a powder, whether it's in my shake or my coffee or whatever. And then in the afternoon, like before I go teach, I might take, a couple gummies, get another 5 grams, or throw them in my bag.
okay. This wasn't going to be a question because we don't like to promote anybody on the show, but I do want to know what company the gummies or the creatine powder comes from. You say monohydrate, creatine
Creatine
monohydrate? Is that
monohydrate, yeah, and then what I always say, like, so creatine monohydrate, all types are very bioavailable, absorbable, meaning if I take 5 grams, I'm gonna absorb 4.8 grams. So creatine monohydrate is what I would recommend, and then, if I have someone that, like, sometimes some people might get some bloating or digestion issues, and it's very rare, but it's usually what they mix it with. And then for the gummies, the only thing that I would caution and is like many companies are making gummies but not testing them to make sure the creatine is still in there. And the one that I help does, it's NSF certified, and they test it to make sure that there's actually creatine in the gummies.
And
Yeah, I
the
gotta
name of
ask.
it?
Give us
So
the
I don't
name of
want
the
to promote,
company.
and it's not like I make money on it. I'm a
I'm good with
scientist.
it.
Yeah,
Terry,
so I help create gummies. They were like the first gummy on the market.
What's it called
CRE
again?
and the number 8, create.
CREATE, create.
Oh, create. Oh, the real.
Yeah,
Okay, create.
yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you. Wait, I still got more. How about,
No, you're good.
okay. So, so 5 gram. That's women. Yes. Women. What about dudes?
Same.
Same? Same?
So it's the
Okay.
same creatine, same dose. I think the dosing differences come, and I have this debate a lot of people like, well, should you take it per pound? Like, obviously, I
That's
don't,
what I was.
I'm assuming you're bigger than me, but maybe not. I got a lot of muscle. But it's like, what are we talking? We're talking about a kilo, like a gram difference. Like, I'm going to see the same benefits. There's no point in doing that research because we know it works and the dose is going to be so slightly different. I think that the difference is, what's the goal? Are we trying to like saturate it quickly? That dose might needs to go higher. We're really trying to understand the impacts on brain. That might need to be higher depending on how much muscle, also depending on how much meat you have. So I would still right now make that blanket gram dose. There are some gram per kilogram, but it's really not that much different. We're talking about a couple grams.
Wait, I gotta ask
Before or
one thing.
after a workout?
Okay,
No,
go ahead.
no. It could be a
Go
one-word
ahead.
answer. Hold on. Before
Yeah,
or
go.
after a workout?
Most important is that you take it every day.
Okay.
Go, Terry.
So, all right. So, what would a person that loves data, that looks at their watch or their ring, what can they expect to see when you start adding creatine?
That's a great question. So a watch is not going to pick it up. The effects that you might see are indirect. So the way I describe creatine is it will help with your training volume. You might be able to do a few more extra reps. You might be a little bit stronger. That's not going to show up on a watch. However, if you are able to recover faster, that might over time show up with a lower resting heart rate or your recovery heart rate. But again, indirect effects because it's now allowed me to train harder or recover faster. There's some early data we're actually trying to dial into this impacts on sleep. Some early data that on training days it might be helpful, but honestly, we just saw some opposite. I think it allows you to train harder, and so sleep is worse. And we want to look at a couple days after. So like how like that recovery piece. The interesting thing that we like might be relatable to your listeners is we're seeing some really cool effects on fluid distribution and like cell integrity. So if you have someone that has a home scale, like a bioelectrical impedance analysis, creatine works by bringing fluid into the cell. And we actually saw this across the menstrual cycle. So in the luteal phase, women tend to have more fluid extracellularly. They're like puffy, gain some extra water weight. And creatine supplementation appeared to make it go more intracellularly, which then, if you have more water intracellularly, that's also primed for greater muscle protein synthesis and, nutrients, etc. So that fluid change you might be able to detect on like a home scale, depending on how good it is.
What about
That's
for injuries?
Yeah, injury data is very interesting. Creatine is not magic, and people talk like it is, but with injury, it's pretty interesting. Like if you supplement with creatine either right after injury or like surgery, and with PT, like there's really cool data that shows that it helps you get back stronger faster compared to not.
great. That
Yeah.
is golden. I didn't even think about the injury part of it. I'm
Mhm.
only thinking about post-training repair, but that is
When someone in my
fantastic.
family has a surgery,
Yeah.
one of the key things I send them is creatine. I send them, you want to know what else I send them?
Tell me.
Omega-3 if they're not taking it. It helps with inflammation, healing, and then usually some sort of like essential amino acid to help with amino acid availability in between meals. Accelerates recovery, repair, protein synthesis.
A combination of essential, not one in not any in particular, just
A powder, yeah.
composition. You know, just I'm curious because I did creatine probably 20 years ago
Before I was
when
born. I'm just
it,
kidding.
Terry, she is perfect for this show. Did you tell?
That's awesome. Did I didn't even know they made creatine back
Did-
back
y-
back then,
yeah,
but yeah.
well, yeah. All right. I have no comeback for that one. Oh hell! All right, back to the. I forgot what I was going to ask. Oh yeah, so
He needs creatine for his brain.
yeah, I need it bad. Oh, so some time ago when I first first started creatine, or I tried it. There was a company by a guy named Bill. Well, Bill Phillips
Bill
came out with
Phillips. Yeah,
Bill
Eight
Phillips,
Ball
right?
Nutrition, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I love Eight Ball.
So when he had bought the company EAS
Yes.
many years ago,
Uh-huh.
there was this whole challenge that he came up with. But I thought creatine was an integral part of it. I tried the creatine, but it had so much sugar or sweetener or sugar in it that I became terribly hypoglycemic because I would train and then take it, and
Yeah.
I stopped after a week because I would be miserably tired. Now, I imagine creatine is a little more advanced now. That powders don't have as much sugar or sweetener.
Yeah, I mean, way back then. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
They
you got to rub it in.
uh, they used to think that you had to take it with sugar to be
Uh,
absorbed, to be
yeah.
uptaken. And it does help. Like if you take creatine with some sugar, it actually really helps with carbohydrate like glycogen recompensation, but you don't need the sugar. Like we know it will absorb anyway. So I think that you can take a plain creatine monohydrate now and it's unflavored and it will still work. Now, a little bit of sugar can help, but you're right. Like the old products, it was mixed in a lot of sugar or mixed with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that like some people, it goes back to your question about before or after exercise. I once did a study and we were looking at a pre-workout and it had creatine in it, and we'd have to get them to take it and then get a bathroom break before they did their intervals on the treadmill. And it wasn't just from the creatine, but if you mix a bunch of stuff before you go train,
Mhm.
so if you're sensitive that way, otherwise like post exercise, I always say is a good time to take things because your muscle is like a sponge. You've just wrung it out. And if you add things like sugar and creatine and amino acids, it's just going to get there faster. But you don't have to take it then.
If
I
you're if you're if you're gonna take it daily, is there a time of day that just for the average person is better, morning, noon, or night? If you're just trying to do that stacking thing.
Yeah, so I would say just pick a day that you can do, pick a time that you can do it every day. I like to do mine in the morning. I do think I see like a bit of a brain effect. And so I like to either do mine in the morning or in that like afternoon slump.
I am so gonna do that. Yeah, no, I'm glad I clarified that because I had this fear that it was still made the same way. Because back then, when I would crank up that Model T Ford,
Yeah.
I would get a pump in my. All right, never mind. I'm joking.
Was a
You're
Model
probably
A.
taking NO Explode too at the same time, or you could talk about peptides. Yeah, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure you were taking peptides then, huh?
Oh yeah, sure. Back then it was all out, man. You could go into a pharmacy. No lie. We did bodybuilding back then in South Florida, where I'm from, where I'm here. We could go into a pharmacy it was Miramar Pharmacy. You could ask for a testosterone or any kind of steroid, and they would give it to you over the counter. It was shocking.
That's crazy.
That's how long ago this
Yeah,
was. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Terry, quick, ask a question so while I can recover. While I can recover,
I made you flustered. Look at that.
I'm
Abbie,
sweating.
I hope you're going to clear your schedule because I'm going to have you on once a month just for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. We call it Crackin Backs Comedy Central. That's what it'd be. Right?
Oh, I
Oh
got more.
man.
I got more. We can keep
Oh
going.
yeah.
All right.
I'm having a hot flash.
Hot
Sorry.
Yeah.
flash. I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I could
All
see
right.
it happening.
And thank you for really diving into the creatine because that's such a
Yeah,
hot topic right
big
now.
time.
But the other hot topic is hormone replacement therapy, and some of that stuff is so expensive, and some of our patients listening going, is this something I need to take? Is it do I put the patch on? Do I do the pellets? Do I do that? But then it's expensive. So what are some things that like 3 highest impact habits that you can do when you start in that perimenopause stuff? Or you just, and then I have other people going, I'm just going to let nature take its course. So what are some of your advice?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm not a hormone replacement expert. I do like a lot of our work is really focused on one, what if you don't want to take it? And or can't take it. Some women, it puts them at greater risk. And more importantly, too, of like even if you're taking or provided with hormone therapy, you still need these lifestyle changes to and lifestyle habits to be really healthy and have an impact. And so um I will also reframe this. There's nothing that you need to take. Hormone therapy is often prescribed to treat symptoms. So I would say if someone is really struggling with symptoms, that would be something to advocate for. And so, like, I know a lot of women with really bad joint pain or, mood disorders or, they can't sleep at night or really fatigued. It's like those, like, let's leave space. Like, a provider really should help you. And a lot of providers don't know how. And so it's very dismissive. And same thing, insurance doesn't often cover it, but if you find a provider, like it's managing symptoms. So that's one thing. Now, if we look at some of the other things that hormone therapy is being touted for, it's not going to give you massive amounts of muscle. It's not going to make you lose a bunch of fat. It's not going to, like it may make you feel better and then your workouts are better, or now you have the energy to do your workouts. But this has not been studied yet. I have a feeling that as we see this hormone therapy increase, and then you have all these active women, you have like a different group of women going into perimenopause. They've been active their whole lives because of Title IX. And then they crank up their training. We're going to see there's differences in how the muscle and tendons adapt. And so, will we see greater musculoskeletal injury? Maybe. And so, like, I think there's a lot we need to know on the back end. And so, what advice I would give is one, if you have symptoms, definitely get a provider that can help you. It's very dismissive and very hard to find someone that can help you. On the reverse, it goes back to consistency. And I'll give you two thoughts here. Like, I hear from a lot of women that are like, "Oh, I've been doing the same thing as always, and I'm training hard, but I'm gaining belly fat." And so in those scenarios, I always say like that's exercise metabolism for you. We train to become really efficient. So go do something you're not used to, or add some intervals. If you run all the time, go swim. obviously lifting weights, you can do more progressive or do some more power training, kind of switch it up, so that your mitochondria are being kind of targeted, etc. And then from the nutrition side, it's also about consistency. And the one thing too, I see two things. Women are under fueling because they're trying to lose fat, so therefore they're not eating, and that's causing more fat gain over time. Or they're avoiding certain food groups like carbohydrates or fiber or some of those things. And so, like, another thing that's pretty rooted in science is kind of modify your carb to protein ratio. So 1.5 to 1 carb to protein ratio per meal and per day. So what that would look like is maybe I'm getting, 50 grams of carbohydrate and I'm getting 35 grams of protein. And then add in a vegetable or a fruit, some sort of fiber, really important. And do that a couple times a day. Like, kind of keep it simple, keep it fueled, and keep it consistent is going to be the most helpful things. And then another really, I think, thing that impacts the whole body. I'm not a sleep researcher, but so much data on sleep and sleep habits going into bed. And then the other thing, women wake up, like I always joke, I have like 25 squirrels in my brain. And once they're up, they're ready to go. And so, like, even those sleep habits can have a pretty big indirect effect on body composition and microbiome and all of those things. So, to sum that very long response up, is take care of yourself and find like consistent habits to do. And if it's not working, then do something slightly different that your body's not used to.
So on that note, you have people libido is a big topic especially when it comes to perimenopause and all
Yeah.
that. So a
How did
lot of
I
women,
forget that important
I
symptom?
have
Maybe
no
because we talked about
idea.
vitamin
You got
D. Yeah.
stuck in the black and white movie, from my
Yes.
partner, but
Yes.
where the couple slept in separate beds on TV.
Yes.
So, what and libido, you have research, you're exercise scientist that says exercise, maybe even creatine, strength training can increase libido, and then yet women being driven into taking all this hormone replacement, which can F their body up. Is there any research that compares the two of what works better if they just get into a strength exercise lifestyle program versus going the hormone replacement?
I don't think head to head, but like if we just think about this. So libido is one of those first symptoms that women complain about, and that is treated, like that people will treat that. But you're right. Like, if you think about all exercise, exercise is the best way to cause vasodilation, and that's blood flow to your muscle or your sexual organs. Like, it's very healthy, and that's a key part. So blood flow is one thing. The other thing is every muscle. Like, if you think about a Valsalva maneuver that you do for a squat or a deadlift, that's making your vaginal wall stronger, and it's going to have that experience be better. And so, but it's those things that aren't necessarily, like, again, how are we going to research that, and is it worth the funding, and etc. So, like, I'm not sure there will ever be a head to head because no one cares about women's sexual health enough. But I think yes, like an active lifestyle, like, your sexual organs are a muscle and they need to be moved, and it's not just, like, you can do that in the gym. It's all supportive muscles. And then another key thing is hydration. All these principles of active lifestyle have a direct impact on libido and sleep, which sleep impacts libido, etc. So absolutely. Now, there's no head to head, and I don't study that, but I'll have to go look.
Okay, so strength training, just to be specific, because women often complain or comment on they don't want to look pumped up,
Mhm.
or they don't want to get big muscles or anything. But when you say strength training, what do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying forever to get pumped up, so it doesn't work. Um, and so women are never gonna naturally gain a lot of muscle. Now, they have, even if you take testosterone, it's not gonna have massive body composition changes. It's just to get you to normal. So when I say strength training, I really, it's really a stimulus above normal, some sort of push pull. Most muscle groups. Now, if someone, like, one approach, I'll just use an example. If we're trying to have pretty important effects in a short period of time, we will often use progressive resistance training. And what that means is that you are adding in weight as you get stronger. And you are, pushing the intensity a little bit. And most women, like right now, and I'm sure you talked with Stacy about this, a lot of people right now are saying, oh, you need to lift heavy weights and do a lot of jumping. And like, yes, that's true. If you've been jumping and already lifting, that's great, but that's not the only way you can do it. Like what you need to do is stimulate the muscle with a load that you're not used to. So if you've never done anything, stimulate the load or the muscle with some resistance bands, and as that gets easier, add load. And then the opposite true is like you don't necessarily have to lift heavy. If you're not going to lift heavy, then you need to do more repetition so that your time under tension is there, so that you're really basically building up and breaking down the muscle is really what you want, and you can get there in a few different ways.
Oh, that was great. I was always curious about repetitions, but you made a good point in saying just progress from where you're at now and then move into a heavier or more or greater resistance. I think even Stacy had mentioned something like, even bring it down to 4 repetitions after you've done enough of a warm up, which most women wouldn't imagine that would be a thing. But hey, strength training is probably one of the best researched items or activities for longevity that there is. It's
Well,
indisputable.
longevity, and when you say longevity, I think the organ of longevity is muscle. And the way we know that stimulates muscle is resistance training. And that doesn't have to have a lot of rules. Now, the rules come around preventing injury. And then a lot of my research is around like timing. How much time in the day you have. I don't have 2 hours to train. I need to be in and be out and make it work for me. And so, like, that's where some of the heavy, shorter, like, it's how do we match lifestyles depending, when I was younger versus I'm sure at your age you have lots of time to train.
You know, I almost brought it up before you said it. But back in the day, the old guys would come up to me when I was a 20-year-old and say, how long do you train in the gym? They would measure your intensity by the amount of time.
Yes.
And I'd go, oh, about an hour. And they go, oh, that's not training.
Yeah.
What? They would spend 2 or 3 hours. And I would look at my dad, and my dad says, that's because they talk most of the time. So I'm
they have
in.
time. They chit chat.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm in for a half an hour. Hello.
Okay.
And I get a
You're
good
not that
workout.
old. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I'm teasing. That's fine. But the other thought was, so strength training. No, I appreciate that. But if you're a runner and you like doing endurance, now you started to mention, or you did mention something about more, cardiovascular. Do you have any suggestions in that area?
Yeah. So even now, the message to a lot of people is, well, you know, endurance exercise makes you fat, or like, don't do that. You need to lift. Which is not true. It's really like, what are you spending your time doing? If you want to be really good aerobically, like you need to do aerobic exercise. You absolutely do need to include strength training. It's just different goals. And so, like I was a collegiate runner. I love to lift weights, and even as a runner, I did. But I'm not going to go lift 4 repetitions. I'm going to make my resistance training more injury prevention and slightly higher repetitions to help with that. And I will overemphasize like the importance of aerobic exercise as we age, particularly for women, because of the cardiovascular changes that we see. We know that aerobic exercise is a huge stimulator for cardiovascular disease risk that you don't necessarily get with resistance training. You get some of it, but the only way to get some of the mitochondrial and vascular changes is from aerobic exercise. So if you want to run, one thing would be integrate some intensity. So a lot of my work is around high intensity interval training. Not that you shouldn't be able to do that every day, but instead of walking for 2 hours, maybe what you do is take 20 minutes and do an interval style workout, Or instead of running for 8 miles, again, maybe it's more of a fartlek, or you're adding some of that intensity in there. And some of it, as we age, just the repetitive nature, people don't often talk about the negative sides of exercise. Like as a runner, likely going to have some joint replaced. But as I age, I do it smarter. Like I don't need to, like depending on what you're training for, if you are doing a long volume, then make sure those muscles around those knees and hips are also supporting those joints to prevent some of that. So it really is dependent. But yes, we need aerobic exercise and we need resistance training.
You familiar with there was a conversation some time ago about over 50, if you can run a mile in 10 minutes, you're fit. But if you can run it in 9 minutes, you're fitter. And if you can run a mile in 8 minutes, you're at the fittest level over age 50.
Hmm.
Have you heard anything about that? I've been
I
using that as a
haven't.
guide. No? Okay.
Um, I haven't, but I'll have to look. Like, I mean, what it is indirectly assessing is VO2 max. And VO2 max, or maximal oxygen consumption, is directly related to mortality and fitness. And so, like, we measure that in the lab. I don't know about the mile piece, but it would make sense. Like, if you can run a mile faster, your aerobic capacity is better, which then means that your heart is getting more oxygen to and from your muscles. So indirectly, it makes sense, but I have not seen that data.
That's something I heard. Oh, and by the way, you mentioned Valsalvas. For those who don't know,
Yeah.
that's you hold your breath, bear down, squat, and so on, which is really something that we do all the time when we were going to lift something. But, it was interesting because you mentioned also about pelvic floor,
Hmm.
and that is probably one of the most neglected muscles that nobody thinks about. And, and actually, we had two guests in the past
Uh-huh.
that were physical therapists and so on that specialized in pelvic floor. One of them was called the Buff Muff. How great is that?
That is
The,
amazing. I'm going to go look her up.
but again, for libido or sexual sexual enhancement, to have that kind of strength down there, it's obviously an important feature. Um,
100%.
so with that said, because we're talking about obviously this um, my generation, baby boomers. I almost said our generation, and I know you would have corrected me real quick. So, but the baby boomer generation is the one that's really, fueling that anti-aging
Yeah.
longevity thing. So, could you share what you would, how you feel about the youth, girls and in childhood, and what they should know now for their future? Because obviously, they're on their phones and they're not doing as much as they used to. So I would love for you to expound.
Yeah, so I work more with like college age women, but a key thing that I that does come up all the time is a little funny joke that you maybe have seen, is most of the women going through perimenopause are dealing with daughters getting their first periods. It's like these hormonal upheavals, and I say that like jokingly, but I do think we're now in a generation. Like I came through a generation where no one talked about any of that. Like, and it was a badge of honor not to have a period. And flipping that conversation of teaching young girls and boys, to be honest, of like, what does it mean when you start bleeding, and what does that signify? And like, how does that impact your body? I think having those conversations are really important, and kind of preparing them for that. The other thing that I don't know, there's this New York Times article that just came out, and there's lots of conversation about like, why are so many girls getting ACL injuries? And
I
it's
saw it.
yeah,
Yes.
and it was a
Yes.
great article, but it's not because of their hormones. Like, girls don't need to be afraid of that, but they don't have the resources. They're not getting resistance training and strength and conditioning as early as boys, and they're now training, the volume and the opportunity is higher. So, it's like one of those things, like I want every young girl to be able to advocate for themselves and to say like, oh, like be able to openly ask of like, oh, I'm having, you might know this, but more than 75% of women and girls have menstrual pain. When they're like, they have, we call it dysmenorrhea, and most girls just like grit and go through it. When in reality, like, some of those things can impact how you train or how you sleep, or like, so like my goal is that these girls, and with help of moms and dads, that we can have those conversations so that, it's an indirect effect on injury.
That's great. By the way, I can't believe you brought up that article. How good was
Mm.
that article?
It was very good. Yeah.
As I went through it, I said, gosh, I would love to interview, have the woman, the physical therapist
Hmm.
on and then when you read down a little bit further, lo and behold, Dr. Terry is friends with Dr. Mendelbaum, the orthopedic
Oh,
surgeon that they work together. So
that's
we will
amazing.
have her on our show. I
I love
can't
that.
wait. Right?
Yeah, and I
That,
think it's bringing those worlds together, because, like, I think from currently it's been, oh, like, we actually have some of the best ACL researchers here at UNC, and we're looking at all the mechanics. And early on, like a couple years ago, they never even thought to ask about menstrual cycle or previous training history, or like, and it's part of, like, as a researcher, we always learn more, but it's bringing all these fields together to say, okay, what do you know from your field? What do you know? What do we need to be doing differently for these girls? Yes, their Q angle is different. So how do we train that to stabilize that based on strength and conditioning that no young girl is getting?
there something that's very important to that whole schematic there, and then Dr. Terry can also relate to it, is that I I too am seeing many more females with ACL tears. And then simultaneously there's research out there that actually discusses about the antibiotics and NSAIDs, how
Mm-hmm.
much of an effect they have on weakening ligaments and tendons.
Hmm.
So
That's really fascinating. I don't, I mean, I generally knew that, but I wonder if that's also related to symptoms. Like, so many women are dealing with painful
yeah,
periods and
yeah.
symptoms, and, using NSAIDs to treat that. So like, there could be a number of angles to look at. Interesting.
Yeah, that the work is out there. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's about time. But in the article, they also mentioned how women's sports is becoming a huge endeavor:
Hmm.
soccer,
Hmm.
volleyball, hockey, and that's where I'm seeing some of these ACL tears. So, um,
Can I make
are,
one mention of that? I know you work
of
with some
course.
pro sports, and I've had the opportunity to work with the U.S. soccer, and it's
Hmm.
really cool what they're doing. So Emma Hayes is the head coach, and she takes everything from what she calls like a her lens of, like, everything is female forward, and then how do you then bring that down to the younger players? It's very cool, and just shows like how it can come from the top down and start to change things.
Terry, I think we're
Hold on.
ready.
Getting close, but I do want to
Oh,
ask
okay,
one
okay,
thing to
okay.
close. We've been talking about your research, your published stuff. What's the one thing that you hope women, you kind of touched on, but I want you to kind of finish this before we go to the next section, that you hope women actually feel or believe differently about their bodies because of the research you've done?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, my hope is that we can teach women about their bodies to be empowered. I think now perimenopause and aging and menstrual cycle, I wouldn't say it's scary, but no one has taught us what it means and how to use it. Like, estrogen is such a powerful hormone when we're younger. It can make us stronger, recover better, instead of being afraid of it. And then into perimenopause, some of the trouble comes from it takes a long time for women to realize what's happening. Instead, they feel terrible. They think it's just them. So it's saying, like, here's what it means. Here's what your body's doing. Here's how we modify it in a way that you want to. And it's not under eating and, over exercising, because that makes things worse. So really giving women the data to be able to implement it in their day to day that's feasible while they're raising a family, have careers, and still trying to take care of themselves.
Ready for rapid fire,
Always,
Terry?
Okay.
always,
All
always.
right. Abbie, I got 5 questions for you. We look for a short answer, so we can get through all 5 of them. Notice I'm sitting up in my chair because I'm bracing myself for some of your answers.
Okay.
Are you ready for question number 1?
Let's go. I'll try and be succinct.
If your grad student secretly followed you around for a week, sleep, workouts, food choices, what's something they'd see that would make them say, wait, our professor does that too?
Oh gosh.
This is Spencer's payback, by the way.
Oh yeah, baby.
Well,
Oh
my
yeah.
grad students already know. So they already know. Okay. Here's what. Okay. They already know everything about me. Here's one that go off. I listen to very loud rap music with a lot of bass and with tinted windows so no one can see. I love a good jam session in my vehicle with probably inappropriate music for white professor.
You feel my pain. When I was at Miami Dolphins, they would play that music, and I would say to some of the players, I go, "I love this song, but I can't sing the words because the N word is in it in every other way." So,
Yeah, when I was younger, I had a subwoofer in my car. Um, there
you're
you
really
go.
a bro below that white skin, huh? What's up, Abbie? What's All right. Wow. Question number 2. Man, we could go into that one. All right. That is great. All right. Okay. Abbie, question number 2. Your bio lists lots of titles, and they're very impressive. Professor, researcher, lab director. But one of the ones that you highlight most is mom. Be honest. Has motherhood ever completely humbled you, your exercise physiology expertise?
I mean, every day.
Yeah.
Not from an exercise perspective. I actually think pregnancy and delivery is the most athletic event you'll ever do, and you should train for it. And I loved it. Like I squatted out my babies and I squatted right up to it. And then, but I think the humbling part is you have no fucking idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, um, and especially from like a nutrition exercise space, yeah, you don't want to push them too hard, but you want them to love it. Uh, so yeah, it's all very humbling, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Um, but I love my kids.
Oh, obviously. Yeah. No, that's
That's the
great.
most
And it's
honest answer I probably ever heard.
no, but you know what? She just created a complete paradigm shift on the concept of labor and delivery, an athletic event. How
Right.
freaking cool is that?
It is
Right.
literally like the human body is so cool. Like, think about, oh yeah, it's amazing. And then even postpartum of like nutrient timing, yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. So let's see. Question number 3. Was there ever a moment in your lab when a student asked a question that was so good it made you stop and think, wow, this next generation might actually be smarter than us?
Want my honest answer?
Yeah, I have a
My
feeling
honest
I
answer is
agree with
the
I'll agree with you.
opposite. It's like, oh shit, these people are gonna take care of me. Um, I just don't think they have the resilience yet. I feel like we're still on COVID. They don't have critical thinking. Not all of them. They just we're still teaching them how to do hard things and be resilient and think critically.
Oh, yeah. No, I have interns that circulate in our office, and I ask the same questions.
Yeah.
I got you. Um, although
We're
there are
gonna
some
get
that
them there, and I'm not
yeah,
giving up on them. And we've got some
no,
good ones, but yeah,
no, I actually also have some brilliant ones.
yeah.
Question number 4. Um, I was actually gonna I was gonna ad lib a question and ask you if you were given a rapper's name, what would it be? But that's not. I'll give you time to think about that because at Miami Dolphins they used to call me Doc Speezy. I go, I like that, Doc Speezy.
I do like that.
That was my rapper name.
God,
Um,
we're
for a
gonna have
long
Lord
time.
Baron Doc Seavey now.
Yeah.
I love that.
Ok-
For a long time, my lab group called me Honey Badger. It's not really a lab name, but yeah. Or not really
It's
a
not a
rapper's
rap.
name,
It
but
could
Well,
be.
honey
yeah,
badgers are badasses, so that
right.
may be the
Yeah.
reason.
So there you go.
Don't mess with the honey badger. All right. The real question number 4. If the 18-year-old version of you could see your life today, what do you think would surprise her the most?
Such a good question. This is a terrible answer. As someone that I don't think that far ahead. Like every day is like I'm just gonna squeeze the most out of it. And so I think my 18-year-old self would be like, "You're just still doing it. You're just still yeah." I have to think about that one. That's what I
Sure.
got. That's a lame answer, but
Nah, not at all. Never a
yeah,
lame answer. You ready for question number 5?
I'm ready. It has to
All
be better
right.
than the last one. So
Question number 5. Abbie, what do you want to be remembered for?
it's a great question. I thought a lot about that, especially my mother recently passed away unexpectedly, and it's given me a lot of thought of like I want I don't necessarily want to be remembered. I want to have a legacy based on the people that I've trained and the science that I've produced and the facts that I've given people to empower themselves. So I want to, really be more known for how I made people feel and for the contributions to the knowledge that I've given.
You're doing it. And I want to thank you for being on the show. I would also love to know who your favorite rapper is. Rick Ross, Pop Smoke, 6ix9ine. What do we
Okay.
got?
All right. Funny that you say that. I once won a big award. I think it's like I had to pick a walk-up song. And do you know what my walk-up song was?
I got to hear.
Yeah, it was Rick Ross Hustlin'. Like literally like that is life. Every day I'm hustling. And that is yeah, pretty much sums it up.
Love it.
So
I
the funny
love
that
it.
you brought up Rick Ross. I don't know if he's my favorite, but that's a good one.
Purple
Ugh.
Lamborghini. Purple Lamborghini. Come on. All right. We're going to start emailing each other. Hey, had you heard this song? All right. All right. This was great. This is great. Thank you so much for being on the show. And you
Yeah,
gave us
thanks so
some
much. It's been great. Really appreciate it.
tremendous information. Thank you.